we'll go back to another mailbag. Here, the most interesting question I thought that was published, Cody, was do you try to get ahead of the opt out essentially for Eduardo Rodriguez and offer him a market value contract extension? That's really an angle that I hadn't really thought
Same,
of.
same.
And so credit, I want to get, it was Robert. Robert with the question, so I want to give him credit there. Really thought provoking question. I'll give my thoughts, Cody, and then you can kind of take it in whichever direction you want. I just don't know if there's even going to be a meeting at the table to be had there from Eduardo's perspective. If you're keen on hitting free agency, which he will be eligible for, and it's his right, his contractual right, CBA laden right to do so. I just don't know if there's an offer that the Tigers can, like, there's not, because there's no market value right now. The market value will
Yeah.
come later. So you can go based on last year's, but not really. You know what I mean? That's just a floor. So unless he just wants, like, generation of Eduardo Rodriguez family tree to live in Detroit from, the rest of his life, there's not really any business sense to doing it unless he just loves playing for the Tigers, which I'm sure, like, I don't think there's any disinterest or anything like that. But
You
like,
think Eduardo Rodriguez loves playing for the Tigers, Kieran?
I mean, I'm just
I'm
saying,
not saying he doesn't like it. I'm not saying he hates it, but I'm saying this guy played on a winning team in Boston, and we saw his first year in Detroit went. I don't think he's going out of his way to
yeah, yeah,
you
nor
know, I want
nor
to
would
stay.
anybody in that situation. So
Right.
from a business perspective, I just don't know. Like, the Tigers would have to blow out the market for him to really consider it.
Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting, and credit to him for getting back to Eduardo of old this year, shoveling
Yeah,
his.
I think it probably never ends up being a discussion for reasons you just stated. It probably, if I'm Eduardo's agent, I would probably be like, dude, let's just hit free agency, and if we want to keep talking to the Tigers, we can talk. But we're gonna see what other teams come after you and how much they offer you. You're a lefty starter. You've had success before. This is all assuming he stays healthy and continues performing at this level, by the way. Um, so I'm trying to think, okay, would that be smart for the Tigers? And that's an interesting conversation. I don't think it's a ludicrous suggestion at all. I tend to lean toward no, because are you close to competing? Not sure anyone really knows what the timeline is now, right? A lot has to go right for even 2024, to feel like a year where playoffs are even a conversation. So is this where we're devoting our money? Especially if you have a tradable guy where you could get young hitting, which is probably what you need the most. When you do have Mize and Scooble returning, and although you can never have too much pitching, there's nothing wrong with having Scooble and Eduardo and Mize. Like you do have some pitching depth in the system. Like I think you can afford to not have Eduardo Rodriguez, and in another year or two, if the rest of the organization has gotten things right, you can go back out in free agency and you can sign another ace, maybe even more of a proven, consistently proven guy than Eduardo Rodriguez. I I think you have a pretty good opportunity right now to get some value for Erod, and I think it probably makes more sense to capitalize on that than it does to try to keep him around.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we just talked about how piss poor the offense is, and
Right.
you have one of this is your best opportunity.
It's probably the
To
best trade chip they have had since who?
exactly.
Since trades that we don't like to talk about around here. But, the last few years, Erod
Hey,
is a far more valuable trade chip than they've
maybe a guy who's gonna be in town this week. Maybe a
had.
guy who, like, his first name is two initials. I'm not sure. Uh, but yeah, and then yeah, from it would be such a feel good story if the team was, like, more successful. But that's not the status that we're in. And yeah, I think another thing that the reason that we do the HKG rankings, which I'm gonna do a little wrinkle on that a little bit later, the reason we do that is because, like, Harris has to try to build a team in his mold, and every single player that he inherited, there's no guarantee that he feels the way that Al felt about this guy. You know what I mean? And it just like every single guy. And Eduardo feels the same way. And you could argue that, like when he was researching him being Scott Harris, when he was researching the team and how to improve the roster, that asset was probably first on his list of like, this is how I can improve the team like more quickly than just waiting for guys in the minors and draft and free agency and all that stuff.